I spent 4.5 hours watching the top 20 videos on how to read books effectively. Now get the most powerful insights packed into this one video and transform the way you read forever.
You are surrounded by screens, notifications, and endless information fighting for your attention. Yet within this noise lies an ancient technology that can change your life: the book. Reading is no longer just a hobby, but a survival skill, a shield against mental overload, and a path to deeper understanding. Each page demands your focus, and every book becomes training for your mind. Ali Abdaal, a productivity expert and former doctor, offers wisdom that cuts straight to the heart of this transformation. He says you should read what you love until you love to read. This means starting with books that genuinely excite you, books that make you want to turn the next page, books that call to you from across the room. Through enjoyment, momentum naturally builds.
Joey Schweitzer takes this further by suggesting something almost ridiculous. He recommends setting comically low standards, such as reading just 1 page a day. This eliminates all the friction that stops you from picking up a book. When your goal is just 1 page, you remove the pressure. You silence the voice that says you do not have time, and you begin to rebuild your identity as someone who reads every single day. Jared Henderson, a philosopher and reading advocate, adds that even 15 minutes of reading each day can add up to roughly 10 books a year. 15 minutes is less time than most people spend scrolling through social media during a coffee break. He carries a book everywhere, transforming idle minutes into pages read. He suggests that you read during your commute, choosing a book on the subway instead of scrolling on your phone. He also suggests that you read in bed before sleep, for 15 minutes to over an hour, depending on the night. These are not mere productivity hacks or clever tricks. They are identity choices that transform intention into habit.
Now we need to address one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves about reading. We say we do not have time, but time for reading is never found. It must be made. Newport, a computer science professor and deep work advocate, schedules his reading sessions just like he would schedule exercise or important meetings. He treats reading as an appointment with himself that cannot be canceled or postponed. But Newport goes beyond simple scheduling. He creates rituals that make reading feel special and rewarding. On Friday nights after a long week, he enjoys having a drink and getting lost in a book in his study. In nice weather, he reads on his porch surrounded by plants. When reading demanding books, he drinks tea or coffee. And when reading fun novels, he snacks on crackers, a habit from childhood. These small rituals make him more likely to read. This concept of intentional planning has a name in behavioral psychology. Improvement Pill calls it implementation intention. You write down not just what you want to read, but exactly when and where you will read it. You break a book into manageable chunks that you know you can finish in one sitting. After completing each chunk, you give yourself a small reward, perhaps a favorite snack or a short walk, which anchors pleasure to the act of reading and makes your brain eager to return.
Mark Manson, the best-selling author and thinker, proposes a simple arithmetic approach that demystifies output. If you read 30 pages a day, which takes most people about 60 minutes, you will finish an average book every 10 days. That means 3 books a month, 36 books a year. The key word here is consistency. Manson stresses that steady daily progress beats heroic bursts of reading that happen once in a while. Newport adds another tactical element he calls the closing push. When you get within striking distance of finishing a book, perhaps when you have less than 100 pages left, Newport recommends setting aside 2 solid hours to power through to the end. This prevents the common problem of books that drift along unfinished for weeks or months, always almost done but never quite complete. The closing push gives you momentum and the satisfaction of completion, which fuels your desire to start the next book.
Here is a crucial piece that many people miss. All these strategies work better when your phone becomes boring. Newport removes distracting apps, creating an environment where reading naturally wins against boredom. When you are waiting somewhere and reach for your phone only to find nothing interesting there, a book becomes the obvious alternative. Jared Henderson says we need to log off more often. Your attention span improves with practice. Every time you choose a book over a screen, your brain learns to go longer without checking feeds. Selection is strategy, not morality. Mark Manson tells you to stop reading books you do not like. The book exists to serve you, not the other way around. Ali Abdaal reframes quitting without guilt. If a book is not helpful now, you can return later. Andrew Moore warns against punishing yourself with classics that kill momentum. Build confidence with shorter works first, plays you can finish in an afternoon, or novellas you can complete in a weekend. Greek tragedies and Shakespeare's plays usually take hours to read, while poetry can be enjoyed in small daily doses. Building momentum through quick wins and exploring different genres is therefore important. The approach differs between fiction and nonfiction. For fiction, if the story captivates you, read every single word and savor the experience. But if the book fails to hold your interest after giving it a fair chance, set it aside without guilt. For nonfiction, Mark Manson often takes a more surgical approach. He cherry-picks the chapters that contain the most value for him. He studies the table of contents like a menu and goes straight to the sections that address his current questions or challenges. This is not cheating or taking shortcuts. This is recognizing a hidden truth about reading. The real idea here is opportunity cost. There are more good books in existence than you could read if you lived for 1,000 years. When your purpose is learning and growth, quality and relevance beat completion every single time.
Now we need to address the question of reading speed, because this is where many people get confused. Speed is a tool, but comprehension is always the goal. Mark Manson recommends practical techniques like reducing the inner voice that sounds out every word in your head. This sub-vocalization, as it is called, naturally slows you down to speaking speed when you could be processing information much faster. He also suggests using your finger or a pen to guide your eyes along the lines, which stabilizes your reading and reduces the tendency to backtrack and reread passages you have already covered. Manson reads multiple books at once, keeping different genres going simultaneously. This variety keeps his interest fresh and gives his mind options depending on his mood and energy level. When one book feels heavy, he can switch to something lighter without abandoning reading altogether. But Jeffrey Kaplan offers an important warning here. He states bluntly that most speed reading gimmicks are scams. True comprehension requires reading words in their proper order and giving your brain time to process meaning. The best gains in reading speed come not from tricks, but from eliminating distractions and sharpening your attention. The goal is to balance agility with depth, using mechanical techniques to help you glide through easier passages, while knowing when to slow down for complex ideas that deserve careful thought.
Active reading turns pages into thinking. Bill Gates, known for his voracious reading habits, writes in margins to concentrate and attach new knowledge to what he already knows. Gates commits to finishing every book he starts and sets aside about an hour for each reading session. He found that scattered minutes aren't enough to re-enter complex material or reach the deep understanding he wants. Ryan Holiday, who has written extensively about reading and learning, treats every book as a two-way conversation. He reads with a pen in hand, flags sticking out from key pages, ready to engage with the author's ideas rather than passively absorb them. Robin Waldun calls the first pass through a book signposting. Before diving into details, you scan the structure, the headings, the chapter summaries, mapping out the skeletal argument the author is building. Then, on your actual read, you mark important propositions and number the central points so that filler and tangents cannot confuse or distract you from the core message. Systems make memory reliable and knowledge accessible. Ryan Holiday has developed an elaborate but effective method. After finishing a book, he literally breaks it apart, transferring marked lines and passages to individual index cards. He organizes these cards by themes and subjects, building what he calls a commonplace book, a personal database that feeds his daily writing and thinking. Robin Waldun archives summaries and quotations with page numbers for instant retrieval. Jared Henderson favors simple stacks of cards organized by subject, created during a second pass through important books. But Mark Manson adds that you do not need to memorize everything. You need to remember where to find ideas. When he needs a concept from a book he read last year, he knows which shelf and chapter contain it. The goal is creating a map for quick returns to important arguments and evidence.
Understanding difficult books requires method. Mortimer Adler outlines 4 reading levels. Elementary is basic literacy. Inspectional involves surveying a book's structure through tables of contents and introductions. This includes skimming the table of contents, reading introductions and conclusions, and scanning the first sentences of paragraphs to see the framework the author has constructed. Analytical reading asks what the book claims, whether claims are true, and what follows if they are. You must understand before you judge. First seek to comprehend, then evaluate. The 4th level, syntopical reading, involves reading multiple books on the same subject and comparing their arguments. At this level, you become the master of the conversation, seeing where authors agree and disagree, identifying gaps in arguments, and constructing your own understanding that transcends any single book. Jared Henderson applies Adler's method practically. He starts by classifying the genre of a book, then X-rays its structure to see how arguments build, identifies the central message, and only then judges the work fairly. Anthony Metivier adds the importance of groundwork outside the book itself. He uses trusted secondary sources, reviews, and biographies to understand the context in which a book was written and the tradition it belongs to. He advises readers to ask many questions while reading and to tackle easier parts first, then circle back to difficult passages. Multiple passes through a challenging book beat one frustrated sprint that ends in confusion and abandonment.
Here is a truth that might surprise you. Retention is not about how many colors of highlighter you use. Retention is about use. Mark Manson puts it simply: we remember what we use. If you read a book about nutrition, change your diet based on what you learned. If you read philosophy, test the ideas in your actual life. Talk about the book with friends, even if they seem bored. Your brain tags information shared in social exchanges as important and stores it more durably. Jeffrey Kaplan prescribes a specific technique he calls a margin ladder that forces compression and understanding. Write 1 sentence summarizing paragraph 1. Write 1 sentence summarizing paragraph 2. Then write a 2-sentence summary that synthesizes both paragraphs. Continue this pattern up the page. This practice forces you to process meaning rather than just recognize words, and it builds material for fast review later. Anthony Metivier recommends teaching-style summaries, where you explain the book's main ideas as if instructing someone who knows nothing about the subject. He also suggests creating a memory palace for a few key points from each book, using spatial memory to anchor important concepts. When you encounter particularly difficult passages, sleep on them. Let your mind consolidate the information overnight. Often, you will find that what seemed impenetrable yesterday makes sense this morning. Remember, the purpose of retention is not to win trivia contests or impress people at parties. The purpose is to build durable knowledge that you can actually use to improve your life and work.
Developing good judgment about books requires both slowness and exposure to many different works. Leonie, a 25-year-old book influencer from the Netherlands, explains critical reading through 3 essential, interconnected lenses. First, personal taste is your honest response. Second, craft competence evaluates how well the book is constructed. Third, cultural context considers what the book means in its time and ours. To read critically, slow down and ask whether the book achieves its goals. Evaluate the style, coherence, and arguments. Notice the worldview it promotes and connect it to other books you have read and your own experiences. Talk about it with a reading group or a friend to see what you might have missed. Check the author's sources and watch for hidden agendas or bias. Look for what is missing, what questions are not asked, and what voices are not heard. Be alert to emotional manipulation disguised as logic. Critical reading is not about cynicism or finding fault with everything. It is about maintaining curiosity while applying standards, engaging seriously while thinking independently.
Many people feel intimidated by classic literature, viewing these books as a wall they cannot climb rather than a doorway to deeper understanding. Andrew Moore says you can enter the world of classics through helpful editions designed for modern readers. Penguin and Hackett provide reliable, readable texts. Oxford editions include helpful notes that explain historical context and unfamiliar references. Norton editions include essays that show diverse interpretations of the work. Use the footnotes without shame. Accept that confusion is part of the process. Remember that you are building your thinking muscles with each page. Even professors and scholars disagree about what these books mean. You are joining a conversation that spans centuries, and your voice matters too. You do not need to read every page on your first attempt. You just need a path that keeps you moving forward. Instead of setting arbitrary reading quotas that can become oppressive, consider organizing your reading around projects. Jared Henderson warns that reducing reading to numbers distorts your behavior and breaks your heart when life circumstances change and you cannot meet your goals. Design projects instead. Pursue a big question across multiple authors and perspectives. Walk through the entire range of a genre to learn its patterns and possibilities. Study one thinker deeply through primary texts, secondary works, and biographies. Ryan Holiday reminds us that leaders throughout history have been readers. He points to figures who found time to read even under the most challenging constraints, during wars, while building nations, while running companies. If they could make time, so can you. Robert Greene, the renowned author of 7 international bestsellers, describes books as a way to escape mental loops and limiting thought patterns. Without them, he would be trapped in his own narrow moment. With them, he travels across eras.
Create environments that shape outcomes. Keep different books for different times. A novel for evenings, biography for mornings. Audiobooks extend reading into commutes and workouts. Cal Newport creates physical cues for deep reading, a specific chair, a particular drink, sacred time. Remove apps so boredom roots to pages. Read before going online when attention is cleanest. Do not think of rereading as redundancy or wasted time. Think of it as renewal and deepening. Ryan Holiday returns to the Stoic philosophers again and again because he has changed and the world has changed around him. The same passage that meant one thing at 25 means something entirely different at 35. The book has not changed, but the reader has, and so the interaction between reader and text creates new meaning. Jared Henderson advises a quick first pass through important books to see the whole landscape, followed by a slower second pass to see how the parts support the whole. Your notes evolve, judgments sharpen, projects grow from index cards and conversations into actions that change your life. Fiction deserves a prominent place in any life of learning, not as a guilty pleasure, but as essential nourishment. Stories train both empathy and attention, teaching you to inhabit other perspectives and follow complex narratives. Mark Manson reads fun books for joy and balance, knowing that a reading life without pleasure becomes unsustainable. Robert Greene calls reading an adventure that widens the world, making you a citizen of all times and places rather than a prisoner of your own narrow moment. A novel before bed serves as a calming ritual that improves sleep while feeding the imagination. Andrew Moore points out that short plays and poems offer fast entry points into voices that shaped our culture. These literary works feed the imagination that later strengthens your ability to analyze and act on the ideas you encounter in nonfiction.
By now, the essential elements align into a complete system for transforming your relationship with reading. Habit and time create an unshakable foundation. Selection and the freedom to quit reduce friction that stops you from starting. Mechanical techniques and attention training keep your eyes honest and your mind engaged. Active reading and systematic note-taking turn passive page-turning into real thinking. Methods for difficult books build depth. Retention through active use makes knowledge durable and practical. Critical lenses keep your judgment sharp and independent. Projects and themes turn reading from a random activity into a lifelong practice with direction and purpose. The result is not a number to brag about. The result is a richer mind that holds more complexity and sees more connections. The result is a calmer life, less pulled by digital anxiety, more grounded in lasting ideas. You become someone who reads, thinks, and grows continuously. In our noisy world where every notification fights for attention, you have found a different path. Between the covers of books lies a training ground for focus, a sanctuary for thought, and a bridge to becoming who you are meant to be. What better place could there be to build the life you want?